rockets have hit the Azeri town of Barda.
They're doing CPR on one of the casualties here. We don't know if he's going to make it. We've seen ambulance after ambulance coming. It could be one of the biggest day of casualties in Azerbaijan since the conflict began.
Suleimanov Humbat was hit by shrapnel while out shopping for groceries. The same attack took out power at this hospital. So there's no working defibrillator, and CPR has to be done by hand. Despite staff trying for over 30 minutes to save him, they failed. He was one of at least 21 people killed in the attack. An estimated 70 more were injured. Many Azeris have been waiting for this war for nearly 30 years, since Armenia took control of Nagorno-Karabakh, a region that is internationally recognized as Azerbaijan's, but is mostly occupied by ethnic Armenians. When Armenia seized it, they also took over some of the surrounding land, displacing 700,000 Azeris. In the past 6 weeks of fighting, Armenian officials say half the population of Nagorno-Karabakh has been forced to flee, and around 150 civilians have been killed on both sides.
La ilaha illallah.
In Tarta, 10 miles from the front line, a family is mourning.
Su verin.
16-year-old Orhan Ismail Zaid was killed by shrapnel while picking fruit.
Şehidimizi ağlamak olmaz. Ermeni teröristleri bizim torpağımıza ağlayabilmez. Terörizme yok de.
When something like this happens, the pain is felt by the entire community, but that pain will turn into anger. It's that anger that essentially fuels the conflict and keeps it going.
Kudretli ordumuzun fedakarlığını
Yavaş yavaş,
Türk
başın
bir
koyun,
ordumuzdan
yerliğin bak,
torpaklarımızı
böyle
inşallah
yerliğin.
azat edeceğiz. O gün
Yerli
yakındadır.
koy.
You've just buried your grandson, something that you never thought you'd ever live to do. Surely you must want this conflict to end.
Erməni müsəlmanla həmişə müharibə aparan qanısız millət olub. İstəməyib ki, irəli gedə. Həmişə istəyib ki, əlincadın bükä. İndi Allahın köməkliyi ilə Allah Taala bəlasını verəcək. Da onunla da qutardı. Allah cənab prezidentimizi qorusun ki, inşallah ordumuzla bir yerdə Qarabağımızı işğaldan qutaraq Allah.
The rising death toll didn't slow Azerbaijan's decisive advance. The war has seen Azerbaijan recapture around 1/5 of the land it lost during the War of the 1990s, including the strategically important city of Shusha. That triggered the latest and most comprehensive ceasefire brokered by Russia. Under the deal, Armenia will hand back some territory to Azerbaijan over the next month, and Russian peacekeepers will secure the only active highway linking Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh. The agreement angered many Armenians who stormed their parliament, demanding that Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan resign. Meanwhile, in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, Azeris were celebrating. But this new deal isn't the first attempt at a ceasefire during the latest spike in fighting.
2 dəfə bundan top düşübdü, mənim evimin pəncərələri hamısı qırıqlanıb dökülüb. Bax orada hinimdir, töyük saxlayıram, cücə saxlayıram orada.
We were with Zabila Hasanova and her family as an earlier US brokered deal fell apart just minutes after both sides were supposed to stop.
Gündür dana keçirik, müharibədir, nə qayrıq? Neyniyək?
Ballistik raket.
shit. That was really close incoming shelling. A ceasefire was announced just hours ago, so there's supposed to be a ceasefire. Both sides are not supposed to be engaging, but we've been hearing shelling all day.
For Azeris here, there is no compromise, even if it comes at the expense of Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh.
Do you understand the Armenians who live in Nagorno-Karabakh? Do you understand that they are also afraid?
Hərbi obyekt var, heç nə yoxdur. Bu kimin günahıdır? Bu körpü uşaq atırlar, evlər dağılır, uşaqlar ölür. Bunu yəni göstərmək lazımdır. Ölərik, təzədən əmələ gələr, amma bizim mənliyimizi qıranmayırlar. Neynəsələr də.
There are many thousands of Armenians who live in Nagorno-Karabakh. Do you believe that they have a right to stay there?
Əgər dövlətimiz razılaşarsa, müəyyən şey, biz onun qarşısında durası deyilik. Amma haqq işi, bu boyda şəhidlərimizin qanı tökülür, bu qədər insanlar. Onu bizim dövlətimizin başçısı bilir, biz o nə desə biz də onunla həmrəyik. Çünki bu işə, bu yola o baş qoyubdur, bu işi aparan.
President Ilham Aliyev has held power since 2003 after succeeding his father. Under his authoritarian rule, political dissent is quashed and the media is controlled. Right now, his popularity is soaring, but the true cost of this war is unknown.
President Putin said that there's been around 5,000 soldiers who have died in this conflict and that it's evenly split between the two sides. Is he right then?
I don't know who presented this information to President Putin.
Why do you not release your figures?
Why should we? And who did release the figures during the war? Tell me. Did they release the figures of how many soldiers from America, from Britain were killed in Iraq? They released it later. It's difficult to make a precise calculation, first. And second, this is a classified information. When the war stops, we will definitely disclose it.
During our time in Azerbaijan, Vice News was able to independently verify that cluster munitions, banned by over 100 countries, have been used by Armenia against Azeri civilians. The Armenian government denies these claims. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch also accuses Azerbaijan of using the exact same weapons against Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh.
You haven't used cluster munitions?
No, we don't use it. We use other weapons. What we use is shown on video. You can see it every day, what we use. So far, there have been so many fake news about Azerbaijan and what we've done on the battlefield that, you know, one more, one less doesn't make difference.
Do you deny that civilians have been targeted in
Yes, I
Nagorno-Karabakh?
deny that civilians have been targeted.
There's footage all over the TV. People's homes, yards, streets, maternity ward just recently. How can this be denied?
That probably was a result of our attack on the military infrastructure. But look what they have done. What they've done to Ganja. That was a deliberate, targeted, ballistic missile attack on the civilian compound. And it was launched from Armenia, and they still deny it.
But in order for there to be real progression, there needs to be some admission from your part that, yes, you've also committed these crimes against civilians in Nagorno-Karabakh.
No, we didn't. We didn't commit any crime against civilians in Nagorno-Karabakh. All the crimes were committed against us in the 90s.
The truce could mean that thousands of Azeris will now be able to return to a land they were forced to flee from 3 decades ago.
Dağın döşündeydi bizim evimiz. Çok şükür ilahi kendimize qayıtmışıq. Çok şükür ilahi. Alıbdılar ama alacaktılar da. Hamısını alacaktılar. Allah koysuz getireceğim seni de bura. Ona göre de xahiş edirəm icazə verin. O torpaqdan mən əyilib bir öpərdim ki, artıq torpağımıza qayıtmışam mən.
Burada yaşayırdım. Bir otaqlı evdi. Gördüyünüz kimi indi uçub dağılıbdı, sökülübdü.
Oh, wow.
Mən burada yaşayırdım. Təzə gənc ailə idim. Bu isə mənim atamın evi idi. Yəni mənim uşaqlığım burada keçibdi.
Haydar Allahverdiyev fled this village through Iran 30 years ago.
Why is it so important for you to come back here?
Mənim bu torpaqda doğulmuşam. Bu torpaqda böyümüşəm. Mənim tərcüm, mən necə qayıtmayım doğma torpağıma? öz evimizi özümüz əllərimizlə inşa eləyib, tikib, bərpa eləyib kəndimizi yenə əvvəlki abadlıq halına salacağıq.
If the majority of people who live in Nagorno-Karabakh are ethnic Armenians, do they not have the right to self-determination and to choose who they are governed by?
Do the people in Catalonia have a right for self-determination?
It's whataboutism. Let's talk about.
Yeah,
let's
let's
talk
talk-
about Nagorno-Karabakh.
Coming to Nagorno-Karabakh, what they've done in the early years of the conflict, they expelled all Azerbaijanis from Nagorno-Karabakh, 40,000 people. And without Azerbaijanis, they voted for independence. And this referendum was not recognized. So this is brutal violation of, international law. But what I said, that we need to, after the war is over, we will need to learn to live side by side.
You can understand why they don't believe you, though.
Because they've been brainwashed.
Because they've been seeing bombs fall around them.
But what was 28 years before? There have been no bombs. Why didn't they give the territories back to Azerbaijanis, to their neighbors?
What will it take for you to abide by a ceasefire?
Well, if Armenia commit to ceasefire, we will do the same. Because we already, I think, to a large degree, accomplished our mission. A large part of the occupied territories are liberated. Therefore, there is no need for us to continue if we can achieve our goal by peaceful means. And as you know, today, already the mediators are addressing their messages primarily to Armenia, that they have to liberate the remaining part. Not much is left. They need to pull back their troops from part of Agdam, from Lachil and Kalbajar, and from Shusha. And also, they need to make a statement about that they will do it. We do not demand them to remove and then to stop. We say, make a commitment.
Why agree to a ceasefire when the reality is that you don't believe in a ceasefire at all?
What I'm saying is not contradicting each other. I said many times that we see the resolution of the conflict by military political means. So far, we always were, mediators were saying that only peaceful settlement, but it didn't work. Therefore, we changed the reality on the ground. We changed the status quo, we changed the line of contact, which no longer exists, and we proved that there can be military political solution. That's what we want to achieve. Therefore, when we say that we will go until the end, I mean that we will go until the end, which means liberation of occupied territories. When I say that we are ready for negotiations, I say we're ready to stop now.
You are ready to have an open and honest negotiation with the Armenian Prime Minister.
Well, with Armenian Prime Minister, we actually didn't have any negotiations within the last 1 year, and he is a person whom I do not trust, because on many occasions he lied. Therefore, I would prefer foreign ministers to be involved. And if we see that Armenia makes such a commitment, that Prime Minister says, yes, Lachin, Kelbejar, Shusha will be liberated, yes, then I'm ready to meet him, but this meeting is not planned so far.
You have recently referred to the Armenian Prime Minister as a drunken dancing clown. This doesn't sound like somebody who wants to have peace with a neighboring country.
Yeah, that's the reality, because he afforded to insult the feelings of millions of Azerbaijanis when he did that. No one before him did that, because everybody in Armenia, and I'm sure in Nagorno-Karabakh, understand what Shusha means for Azerbaijanis. It is a sacred place. It has a special place in our soil. And such a brutal insult of Azerbaijanis, like in being drunk and dancing on our sacred land, of course, could not have any other response. My response, by the way, was very mild and accurate. I did not say anything which was wrong.
Russia is providing arms to both sides of this conflict, and yet they are actively involved in the middle of this peace negotiation. How does that work?
Well, Russia is a Minsk Group co-chair from the very beginning, from 1992, and it's a neighbor to Azerbaijan. It doesn't have a direct neighbor to Armenia, but it's also situated not far from that, and therefore they have a special role in the resolution of the conflict. I said many times that Minsk Group did not deliver any result. This is true, but at the same time, We cannot ignore international realities. We cannot ignore the fact that the co-chairs of the Minsk group are 3 permanent members of UN Security Council. And if these countries did not want or could not find a solution to the conflict, then who else will do?
The cluster munitions that we saw
Yeah.
in Barda were Russian.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yet they're negotiating the peace. Surely you must have something to say to them.
Of course. Have you seen what I've said about that? What I said publicly about that? What I said openly, that this weapon supply must stop? And not only said, but I also sent official letter to Russian president about that. And a lot of questions in Azerbaijani society. Because it's very important what I want to underline once again. We buy it. We buy it from Turkey, from Israel, from Iran, from Belarus, from Ukraine, from many other countries. Armenia does not. If these weapons were not given to them, especially now, the conflict would have stopped a long time ago. Because without these weapons, how Armenia could have kept these lands under occupation? So these free of charge weapons is the main reason why conflict is not resolved, and it must stop. And the cluster bombs are forbidden, and these bombs cause damage. You've seen what they did to Barda. This is a war crime.
We verified the
I
use
know.
of these
Thank
cluster
you.
munitions.
I'm grateful to you. I was informed about that.
But
That you-
I'm wondering whether you will be bringing this up with Russia. Will you be speaking to your counterparts in Russia? Will you be speaking to President Putin?
I spoke to President Putin about this on the 12th of August. That was when we had a telephone conversation after the clash on the state border, which took place from 12th to 16th of July. And we started to trace that after this clash stopped, the day after, on the 17th of July, the supplies from Russia to Armenia, weapons by cargo planes, took place every day, sometimes 2 times a day. And we raised this issue many times. And I spoke about that with President Putin.
On the 28th of October, you say 21 people were killed in Barda by these cluster munitions.
Yeah.
Will you be bringing this up with President Putin, considering the weapons were Russian, and that
course.
we have now verified the fact that these cluster munitions were
I
used?
will. I said to Russian defense minister, who visited Azerbaijan on the 26th of August, before this clash. And I spoke with President Putin during these months 4 times. Pashinyan speaks 5 times a day. I spoke only 4 times. And all the times which I spoke to him, I raised this issue. Please stop sending weapons to Armenia. Armenia only becomes more, aggressive and uses these weapons in order to continue the standoff. If the weapons were not sent, Armenia will stop immediately.
There needs to be some admission from your part that, yes, you've also committed these crimes against civilians in Nagorno-Karabakh.
No, we didn't. We didn't commit any crime against civilians in Nagorno-Karabakh. All the crimes were committed against us in the 90s. Khojaly genocide, we didn't commit any genocide. We were the subject of Khojaly genocide. Now you can see the videos of those villages which have been liberated. It's like barbarians were there. They destroyed everything. They destroyed our mosques, they destroyed our cemeteries, they destroyed our houses. That was done by Armenians, not by us. We did not destroy any building in Nagorno-Karabakh. So this is a reality, and we've been victim of this aggression for so many years. And the international community was silent when Armenians were killing us, when they were keeping our lands under occupation, violating the UN Security Council resolutions. Our soldiers, our civilians, they die for our freedom. They die for our lands. Our struggle is a sacred struggle. It's a struggle for our motherland. And probably you know that at these funerals, when our soldiers are being buried, their relatives, their close relatives say, we will go until the end.
What military support are you receiving in this conflict, and from who?
We do not receive any military support from anyone. We are fighting with our own weapons and guns and with our own soldiers.
Turkey is not playing any part, categorically.
Turkey is a brotherly country to us, our closest ally and friend, and Turkish role is very important for us, and always, and during this active phase of the conflict in particular, because the statements of the Turkish president and other high-ranking officials, including Minister of Defense, Foreign Minister, and others, saying that Azerbaijan is not alone was a very serious message that Turkey is next to us. We don't need any military involvement, but if Azerbaijan will face external aggression, of course, Turkey will say its word. The ceasefire is not an easy thing to do. If somebody thinks that by a kind of a unilateral political decision, ceasefire can be achieved, it's not right. It is bilateral. And what I said to our commanders when we first announced ceasefire, we should stop. We understand that there could be sporadic shootings, but I said stop and don't respond if they don't use heavy artillery. Because sometimes the order to those who are on the front line comes late. We want the conflict to stop. We want peace, but as I always said, Armenia says it wants peace, but we want the land back. And this is our legitimate right.